My name is Raphael. I'm 28 years old. I work as a graphic designer from home. And I never imagined that a simple request for help from my neighbor would completely change my perception of hidden truths and the courage it takes to be truly authentic. I've always noticed the small things. A gift or a curse, I don't know. But when you see too much, you end up getting involved where you shouldn't. I've lived here for 8 months. That's when I met Lucas, my neighbor on the same floor. 32, works in finance, married to Carla. The picture-perfect couple straight out of a magazine ad. But I noticed the cracks. The tension in his shoulders. The way he avoided eye contact. The constant effort to keep the mask in place. Lucas seemed to carry an invisible weight that only I seemed to see. And then, about 2 weeks ago, I started noticing a change. Lucas seemed even more tense. I'd see him in the hallway in the morning, heading to work, and he had that look of someone who'd slept badly. Slightly hollow eyes, and even stiffer posture. A few times when we crossed in the elevator, he seemed distracted, like he was carrying a huge burden that no one else could see. Have you ever had that feeling that something is about to happen, but you don't know exactly what? That annoying intuition that keeps poking you, saying there's more than meets the eye? That's exactly what I felt those days. Part of me wanted to ignore it, move on, keep my life simple and uncomplicated. But the other part, that curious, empathetic part that can't switch off, stayed stuck on that silent mystery. It was a Thursday evening around 8 when everything changed. I was in my apartment wrapping up a design project when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door, and there he was. Lucas. But not the calm, controlled version of him I knew. He was visibly nervous, hands fidgeting, eyes darting, that strained smile of someone desperately trying to look casual and failing completely. "Hey, Raphael." His voice shook slightly. "Sorry to just show up like this. I know we barely talk, but I have a problem, and I was hoping maybe you could help me." I stood there holding the door, trying to read the situation. Why was he so nervous? Why ask me for help when we barely knew each other? "Sure," I replied, trying to sound calm. "What happened?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that screamed nervousness. "It's my computer. It's acting up and I need it working tonight. I have an important project deadline first thing tomorrow morning. Carla's out of town for work, and well, tech support isn't my strong suit. I figured since you work in design, you might know your way around a computer and could give it a look." None of it made sense. He had tech support, he had money. Why me? But his look silenced my logic. There was a desperation there that transcended technical problems. A silent cry for help he couldn't voice. "All right," I said. "I can take a look now if you want." The relief on his face was instant, but there was something else too. Anxiety. As if he had just opened a door he wasn't sure he should have opened. "Seriously? Man, you just saved me. Thanks so much. Can you come now?" I grabbed my phone and followed him to his apartment, 2 doors down. As we walked those few meters down the hallway, I could feel the tension radiating off him. It was almost tangible. And I wondered, for the 1,000th time, what the hell was really going on? But what I was about to discover was far more dangerous than a broken computer. When we entered the apartment, the first thing that struck me was how everything was perfectly organized. Every object in its place. Minimalist, elegant decor. Everything with an air of absolute control. Yet, oddly, it didn't make me feel comfortable. On the contrary, it felt cold, sterile, like a pretty cover hiding something no one should see. "The computer's in the office, in the bedroom," Lucas said, pointing to a hallway on the right. "I'm going to grab some cables that might be causing the problem. They're in another room. Can you go ahead and take a look?" I nodded and went where he had pointed. The bedroom was as tidy as the rest of the apartment. Bed perfectly made, matching nightstands, and in one corner, a desk with a desktop computer. All minimalist, everything in place. I sat in front of the computer and turned it on. While waiting for it to boot, my eyes wandered around the room. That's when I noticed something that seemed out of place in such a controlled setting. On the wall beside the desk, There was an unfinished painting, not purchased, clearly made by hand. Bold, confident brushstrokes, a face emerging but incomplete. There was something deeply vulnerable about that unfinished work, like someone had started to expose a piece of their soul, then stopped, terrified of what else might come out. I looked around again. On the shelf, finance books, a few novels, nothing very personal. But there was a drawer in the desk, slightly ajar. It wasn't locked, just pushed in. And I, who should have been focusing on the computer, felt that nagging curiosity pulling me. It wasn't my business. I knew that. But something inside me said there was more to that request for help than just a technical problem. And maybe, just maybe, that slightly open drawer was a clue. Did Lucas really need help with the computer? Or was he asking for help with something much bigger? Something he didn't know how to ask for directly? I sat there in that chair, staring at that drawer, feeling the weight of a decision I didn't even know I was about to make. My heart sped up a little. There was something off about that apartment that was too perfect. That nervous-sounding request. That man who looked like he was holding himself together by a thread. And I knew, deep down, that whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same. Lucas had left the room about 2 minutes ago. "I'll grab some cables in the other room," he said, and his voice carried the same tension as when he asked me for help. I sat there alone, surrounded by that heavy silence that seemed to scream things nobody was saying out loud. The drawer. That damned drawer. It wasn't locked. It wasn't even fully closed. It was as if it was inviting me, daring me. I knew it wasn't my business. I knew I should focus on the computer, do what I came to do, and leave. But my hand, almost without me noticing, rested on the edge of the desk, and the drawer slid open. The sound was soft, almost imperceptible. A quiet glide of wood against wood. The lock, if it even had one, didn't work properly. It was an accident. I swear it was an accident. But when I looked down, when I saw what was inside, my whole body froze. Books. How to Live Your Truth. Navigating Identity in a Heteronormative World. And underneath, printed articles. How to Come Out in a Heterosexual Marriage. My breath stopped. I should have closed the drawer. I should have shoved it back and pretended I hadn't seen anything. But I couldn't. My hand trembled as I picked up one of the pages and saw handwritten notes in the margins. The handwriting was careful, almost nervous. "What if I never make it?" Written in blue. "How much longer can I keep pretending?" Scrawled in red. And then I saw the sketchbook. It was a drawing notebook. It wasn't complete. Some pages were crumpled, as if someone had started, stopped, and started again several times. I opened it slowly. Drawings of men. Nothing explicit, nothing crude. Just sketches, figures in comfortable poses, contemplative faces, hands reaching toward each other. And then there was an unfinished drawing of 2 men sitting together, shoulders almost touching, gazing out at the horizon. Underneath the drawing, a pencil sentence. "Will I ever have the courage?" My heart dropped. I slammed the sketchbook shut like it was burning my hands. I put everything back, trying to remember exactly how it had been. The drawer slid back with the same soft sound, but my head was screaming. Lucas. Lucas was hiding this. Lucas, the perfect neighbor. Lucas, the man married to Carla for 3 years. Lucas, who always seemed so composed, so controlled, so trapped. Suddenly everything made sense. The strange request for help, the excessive nervousness, the way he avoided my eyes. This was never about the computer. It was never about a technical issue. This was a different kind of plea. A plea he didn't know how to make. I heard footsteps in the hallway. My body reacted before my mind. I sat back in the chair, put my hand on the mouse, pretended to be focused on the screen. But my heart was pounding so loud I was sure he'd hear it. Lucas entered the room holding an HDMI cable. "Found it," he said, but his voice sounded different. Quieter, more hesitant. I forced a smile. "Great." He came closer, then stopped halfway. I felt his eyes on me. Not on the computer screen, on me. As if he was trying to read something on my face, trying to figure out what I'd seen, what I'd understood. I swallowed and faked, fiddling with some setting on the screen. "I think it's a simple problem," I said, and my voice came out tenser than I meant. "I just need to restart the system." Silence. Lucas stood still. The air grew heavy. "Raphael," his voice cracked. Our eyes met. Fear, shame, hope. He saw that I knew. The facade crumbled right there, with no need for words. He glanced away, handling the cable with excessive care. "I'll get a coffee," he murmured. "Want one?" "No, thanks." He left the room again, and I heard his footsteps recede down the hall. But this time, they sounded different. Slower. Heavier. I looked at the drawer. I looked at the computer. I looked at the door he'd just walked through. My mind was a whirlwind. Should I play dumb? Confront him. And Carla, did she know anything? Will I ever have the courage? The phrase from the sketchbook echoed. Suddenly I understood. It wasn't about the computer. It was about connection. Did he know I was gay? Or was it just instinct seeking a safe harbor? I started actually working on the computer. I restarted the system, checked settings, did what I had come to do. But my mind was elsewhere. It was on those books, those articles, those unfinished drawings. Lucas returned 10 minutes later holding a cup of coffee. He took a sip, but said nothing. He stood leaning against the bedroom door, watching me work. "All set," I said finally, standing up. "The computer's working. It was just an update that had frozen the system." "Thank you," he said, and his voice sounded strange, hoarse, as if he were holding on to something much bigger than gratitude. I nodded and started gathering my things. I had to leave. I had to get out before the silence became unbearable, before I said something I shouldn't, before everything fell apart. But as I passed him at the door, our shoulders almost brushed. And in that moment, in that brief second of proximity, I felt it. I felt the tremor in him. I felt the weight he was carrying. I felt the silent desperation of someone who was drowning and didn't know how to ask for help. I stopped. I turned to him. "Lucas," I said, and my voice came out softer than I expected. If you need anything at all, I live in this building. You can call me." He looked at me, and for a second, just 1 second, I saw tears welling up at the corners of his eyes. But he blinked fast, swallowed hard, and forced a smile that didn't come anywhere near looking real. "Thanks, Raphael. Really." I left his apartment with a tight chest. I walked down the hall to my door, went in, closed it behind me, and slid down against the wall. What had I just discovered? What should I do with that information? And why? Deep down, did I feel so connected to a man I barely knew? The answer to that question would come sooner than I imagined, and it would cost me dearly. I picked up my phone and stared at the screen without really seeing anything. My mind was back in that room, in that drawer, in those books, in those drawings. Will I ever be brave enough? That question wasn't just Lucas's, it was mine too. Would I have the courage to do something? To say something? To offer more than a vague, generic offer of help? Because now I knew. Now I understood. And to ignore it, to pretend I hadn't seen, would be like turning your back on someone who was asking for rescue in a way he couldn't even put into words. I took a deep breath and looked at the ceiling. Life had just gotten a lot more complicated, and somehow, I knew this was just the beginning. In the days that followed, everything changed. Or maybe nothing changed, except the way I looked at him. At Lucas. At that man who lived 2 doors down from me, married 3 years, with an apparently perfect life. A life I now knew was a carefully constructed lie. The first time I saw him after that afternoon was in the hallway. It was a Monday morning. I was heading out to the grocery store, keys in hand, earbuds around my neck. Calm. And then his door opened. Lucas came out carrying a bag of trash. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. That was it. But it was enough for that wave of discomfort to run up my spine. He froze. I froze. And for an absurd moment, neither of us knew what to do. I forced a smile. "Morning." He returned the smile, but it wasn't natural. It was the kind of smile you give when you're being overly polite, when you're trying to hide something. "Morning, Raphael." And that was it. He walked past me, went down the stairs to the trash room, and I stood there staring at the wall, feeling my heart beat faster than it should have. Did he know? Did he realize I had seen the drawer? Or was I reading too much into things? I stepped into the elevator trying not to think about it. But it was impossible. Because now, every time I saw him, I couldn't see just the neighbor. I saw the man hidden behind the marriage. The man who kept books about acceptance, about courage, about being who you really are. The man who drew other men in notebooks no one should see. In the days that followed, the silence between us screamed. A quick encounter in the laundry room, averted glances in the hallway. He knew I had seen. I knew he knew. The third time was in the elevator. Thursday, late afternoon. I was coming back from an online meeting with a client, tired, wanting only to get home and switch off my brain. I pressed the elevator button, waiting absent-mindedly, until I heard footsteps behind me. It was him. Lucas stopped beside me, looked at the elevator display, and said nothing. The two of us there, side by side, waiting. The elevator arrived. We got in. I pressed the button for our floor. The doors closed. Silence. A silence so dense I could hear my own breathing. I looked at the panel. He looked at the elevator mirror. Neither of us knew where to put our eyes. Then, when the elevator passed the second floor, he spoke. Softly. Almost a whisper. You didn't tell anyone, right?" My heart raced. I turned to him. He was looking down at the floor, tense, shoulders stiff, hands clenched in small fists at his sides. "No," I said, firmly. "And I won't tell." He exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath. He nodded slightly. "Thank you." The elevator stopped. The doors opened. He stepped out first, walked to his door, and went in without looking back. I stood there in the hallway, watching his door close. And I realized that this man was carrying a weight I could barely imagine. A weight he couldn't share with anyone. A weight that was crushing him from the inside. And me? What was I doing? Ignoring it? Pretending I didn't see? Was that respecting his privacy? Or was it cowardice? I spent the rest of the week oscillating between those two thoughts. Sometimes I thought I should leave it alone, that it wasn't my business, that he would handle things his own way. Other times I felt like I was being negligent, turning my back on someone who clearly needed help, even if he didn't know how to ask for it. But the truth was more complicated than that, because I didn't know if he wanted help. I didn't know if he was ready to talk about it, and I was afraid of intruding, afraid of making things worse, afraid of saying the wrong thing and ending up hurting more than helping. So I stayed quiet, and he did too. And the days passed, one after the other, with that heavy silence hanging between us. But the storm was about to break, until, on a Friday night, everything changed. I was at home, in sweatpants, sitting on the couch, watching some show without paying much attention, just killing time, until I heard the doorbell. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. I got up, went to the door, looked through the peephole. It was Lucas. Standing there, holding a bottle of red wine. He was in jeans and a simple t-shirt, without his usual corporate look. He looked tired. He looked nervous. He looked human. I opened the door. He looked at me for a second, then said in a low, hesitant voice, "Can I come in? I brought wine. I thought maybe we could talk." My heart jumped, not from surprise, but from something I couldn't name. Maybe relief, maybe anxiety, maybe both at once. I stepped aside. "Sure, come in." He came in. I closed the door behind him. And for the first time since that afternoon at his apartment, we were together in the same space again. But now, no pretenses, no excuses, no lies. I pointed to the couch. Sit. I'll get 2 glasses. I went to the kitchen, opened the cabinet, grabbed 2 wine glasses I hardly ever used. My hands trembled a little. I didn't know why. Maybe because I knew that conversation was going to change everything, that there was no going back after it. I came back to the living room. Lucas was sitting on the couch, the bottle on the coffee table, his hands clasped in his lap, staring at the floor. He looked so small in that moment, so fragile, so different from the confident, composed man I always saw in the hallway. I sat next to him, not too close, but close enough. I opened the bottle, poured 2 glasses, handed one to him. He held it with both hands, as if he needed something to lean on. We were silent for a while, a silence that was no longer uncomfortable. It was expectant, as if we both knew something important was about to happen, but neither of us had the courage to take the first step. Until he took a deep breath, looked at me, and asked, in a voice that trembled slightly, "You saw the drawer, didn't you?" I didn't look away. I didn't lie. I didn't pretend. I just nodded. I did. He closed his eyes for a second, like he'd been punched in the gut. When he opened them again, they were shining. Not with anger, with fear, with relief. With something I recognized, because I'd felt it too. He put his glass on the table, ran his hands over his face, and then, in an even lower voice, almost inaudible, he said, "I need to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone." I held my breath. That silence between us weighed heavier than any word. Lucas had just said he needed to tell me something. Something he'd never told anyone. And I knew what was coming. Or at least, I thought I did. He stayed silent for a few seconds that felt eternal. He looked at the glass of wine in his hand as if searching for courage at the bottom of it. His hands trembled slightly. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was clenched. I waited. I didn't rush. I just stayed there, present, showing that he could speak in his own time. When Lucas finally spoke again, his voice came out low, almost a whisper. "I don't know where to start." "Start where it makes sense for you," I said softly. He nodded, took a deep breath, and then he began. You saw the drawer. You saw what was inside. The books, the notes, the drawings." He let out a humorless laugh. "I've always been so careful, for years, and it took one distracted second, one faulty lock, and... Lucas, you don't have to..." "No, I do." He interrupted me, but not aggressively. There was urgency in his voice. "I need to talk, because if I don't talk now, I'll never have the courage again." He put his glass on the table, ran his hands over his face, as if trying to compose himself. When he looked at me again, his eyes were watering. "I'm gay, Raphael." 3 words, simple, direct. But the way he said them, his voice breaking at the end, revealed the enormous weight they carried. "I'm gay," he repeated, as if testing how it sounded out loud. "And I'd never told anyone, never. Not even myself, not really. I always pretended it was just a phase, that it would pass, that if I ignored it, it would eventually go away." He looked away, staring at the wall of my apartment as if seeing something I couldn't see. Since my teens, I knew. Of course I knew. But my family. My father is military, you know? That kind of man who thinks masculinity is everything. That a man doesn't cry, doesn't show weakness, doesn't, he swallowed, doesn't love another man. The words came faster now, as if a dam had broken. I grew up hearing the jokes, crude comments, whispered insults, all the messaging that it was wrong, disgusting, something to be ashamed of. And I internalized every single bit of it. Every word. Every look of judgment. I buried it so deep inside myself that I thought I'd successfully extinguished it. He looked down at his hands. "I met Carla in college. She is amazing, you know? Beautiful, smart, funny. Everyone loved us together. My parents loved her. My dad patted me on the back like I had finally done something right. And I thought I could make it work. That if I tried hard enough, if I really pushed myself, I could be the man everyone expected me to be. His voice began to tremble more. We dated for 2 years before getting married. And during that whole time, I pretended. I pretended when I kissed her. I pretended when her family came over for dinner. I pretended when my friends made jokes about marriage and sex life. I became an expert at pretending, Raphael. So good that sometimes I almost believed the lie myself. He stopped, breathing hard. I saw a tear run down his face, but he didn't wipe it away. We got married 3 years ago. Packed church, lavish reception, everyone celebrating. And I was terrified. On our wedding night at the hotel, I locked myself in the bathroom and got sick. Not from champagne. From guilt. From dread. Because deep down, I knew I was making a terrible mistake. That I was committing to a lie that would destroy not just me, but her, too. Lucas. But I didn't have the courage to stop, he continued, his voice increasingly broken. I couldn't do it. Because doing that would be admitting the truth. It would be disappointing my parents, my friends, my whole family. It would be. He closed his eyes tightly. It would be accepting myself. And I was so scared of that. Tears flowed freely now. He didn't even try to hide them anymore. Then came the promotion. Regional manager. Everyone congratulating me, patting me on the back. My dad called saying he always knew I had it in me. Carla talking about buying a bigger house, starting a family. And his voice broke completely. And I felt myself drowning. Every single day the lie grew heavier, thicker, until it felt impossible to ever escape. He looked at me, and for the first time since he started talking, he held my gaze. I started buying those books, looking for articles online, making drawings. It was my way of at least being honest somewhere, even if it was only with myself, even if it was hidden in a locked drawer. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, messing it up. And then you moved in here, 8 months ago. I saw you for the first time in the hallway, carrying those boxes. And I felt something. Something I'd spent years trying not to feel. And it scared me so much that I avoided you. Said good morning, good afternoon, but always from a distance, always brief. Because I knew that if I got closer, if I really talked. He gave a bitter laugh. The computer problem wasn't even real, Raphael. Or rather, it existed, but I could have fixed it myself. Or called the building's technician. Or anyone. But I called you. Because I needed an excuse. I needed a reason for you to come in here. For us to be alone. He swallowed hard. For me to have the courage to do it. My chest tightened. When you saw the drawer, I almost died. Literally. My heart raced. Everything spun. But I also felt relief. Because it meant I didn't have to pretend with you anymore. That somehow, you already knew the truth. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, but the tears kept falling. And now I don't know what to do, Raphael. I don't know how to keep living this lie. I wake up every day beside Carla and feel guilty. Guilty for deceiving her. Guilty for not being able to love her the way she deserves. Guilty for... His voice failed. For not being who I pretend to be. But I'm also so scared. Scared of what happens if I tell the truth. Scared of losing everything. My job, my family, my friends. Scared of my father's look when he finds out that the son he always wanted never really existed. The desperation in his voice was palpable, but I wasn't prepared for what he would ask me next. The silence that followed was heavy, thick. Lucas was completely broken in front of me, vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen in anyone. He looked at me through his tears, and then asked the thing I never expected to hear. What do I do now? How do I... His voice shook. How did you have the courage? And I understood. In that moment, I understood everything. He knew. He had noticed. Maybe from the start, maybe over these months. Lucas knew I was gay too. Knew I'd gone through my own journey of acceptance. And that's why he had called me. Not just because of attraction, but because he saw in me something he desperately wanted for himself: authenticity. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his question, and I prepared to share something I rarely spoke about: my own story, my own truth. I was silent for a moment, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly the weight of what he was asking me. Lucas wanted to know how I had found the courage, how I had managed to look at my truth and not turn away, how I had survived the fear he was feeling now. And I understood I couldn't give him a surface answer. I couldn't just say everything would be fine, that he only needed to be brave. Because the truth is much more complicated than that. The truth has layers. It has scars. I took a deep breath and began to tell him something I rarely shared with anyone. I was 22 when I finally admitted it to myself. I began, and my voice came out lower than I intended. And look, I wasn't brave, Lucas. I was forced. Because there comes a point when pretending hurts more than confessing. He looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, waiting. I grew up in a strict Catholic household. Mass every Sunday, constant pressure to marry and have kids. I tried dating girls, but it felt like acting in a play I never signed up for. Then at 22, I fell in love with someone in my class. And that's when I had to face the terrifying truth. I was never going to be the son my parents had imagined. "What did you do?" Lucas asked, his voice almost a whisper. I denied it for months. Invented fake girlfriends to tell my parents about. Went out of my way to avoid running into him, even though that hurt like hell. Forced myself to date other girls just to convince myself I was somehow wrong about all of it. I can still feel the exhaustion from those months. But eventually you hit a wall with yourself. One night we were working late at the university, just the two of us. He said something funny, we both laughed, and then our eyes met. And I couldn't keep pretending, not anymore. So I kissed him. Lucas held his breath, and it was like the whole world stopped and made sense at the same time. For the first time in my life, I was being honest. I was feeling something real. I wasn't acting. I wasn't pretending. It was just me. Finally me. "And your family?" Lucas asked. "How did they react?" The sadness in my laugh was unmistakable. My father completely cut me off for a year. 12 months, Lucas. Same city, same house sometimes. But he looked through me like I didn't exist. My mother couldn't look at me without crying, convinced she'd somehow failed as a parent. My sister called late at night, literally begging me to just get over this and go back to normal. I saw Lucas close his eyes, feeling the weight of those words. Those were the darkest months of my life. Lost friendships, lost respect from extended family. People crossing to the other side of the street to avoid me. And there were countless nights when I genuinely thought going back would be easier. Telling everyone it was a phase, finding a woman to marry and burying this part of me forever. "But you didn't do that," Lucas said, and it wasn't a question. "No. Because I realized something, Lucas. I realized that living a lie wasn't living. It was surviving. It was existing in a body that wasn't mine, in a life that didn't belong to me. And maybe, for some people, that works. But for me, it was killing me inside. Literally destroying me." I took a moment, letting the weight of those words settle between us. And look, I won't sugarcoat this. The years after I came out were brutal, really brutal. But for the first time in my life, when I woke up and looked at myself in the mirror, I recognized the person looking back. It was me. Actually me. Not the life my family wanted. Not the life society expected. My life. Finally. Lucas wiped his tears from his face with the back of his hand. And the thing is, I eventually rebuilt my relationship with my family. It wasn't quick, and it wasn't easy. But it happened. My father apologized 3 years later. My mother took longer, but now she calls me every week. Some family members will never accept it, and that's okay. Because I learned it's not my responsibility to carry their discomfort with who I am. I leaned forward, looking straight into his eyes. But Lucas, I can't tell you what to do. There's no right answer here. Each person has to make this journey in their own way, in their own time. But Carla, he began, his voice trembling. She doesn't deserve this. She doesn't deserve to be married to someone who can't love her the way she deserves to be loved. You're right, I said gently. She deserves the truth. Just as you deserve to live authentically. But I'm so scared, Lucas confessed, his voice breaking. Scared of losing everything. My job, my family, my friends. Scared of being alone. I know, I said. And that fear is valid. It's real. I'm not going to tell you it won't be hard because I don't know how your story will unfold. But I do know that living a lie eats away at the soul, Lucas. Day after day, piece by piece, until you don't recognize yourself anymore. We sat there in the heavy silence of that moment. Two men who had walked the same desert of denial and fear, who knew the loneliness of hiding who they really were. Do you feel lonely? Lucas asked suddenly. Even living authentically? I thought for a moment before answering. Sometimes, especially before I came out. There was this feeling of being in a glass bubble, watching everyone live their lives while I only pretended to live mine. It was a deep loneliness, you know? Because even when I was surrounded by people, I was alone. Because nobody really knew me. Lucas nodded, and I saw recognition in his eyes. But after I came out, the loneliness changed in quality. It was no longer the loneliness of hiding. It was just the ordinary loneliness of not yet having found my place, and that I could handle. Because at least I was searching as myself, not as a false version of me. And did you find it? Lucas asked. Your place? I smiled for the first time since the conversation had begun. I'm figuring it out. It's a process, not a destination. But yes, there's a community. There are people who get me. There's love, friendship, real connections. It takes time, but it happens. Lucas looked at his hands, taking a deep breath. I'm so afraid of starting from zero. Of having to introduce myself all over again, explain who I am, deal with judgment. I get it, I said. But think of it this way. You're already starting from zero every day. Every time you wake up and put on the straight mask, you're starting from zero. You're pretending you don't exist. You're killing a little bit of yourself so a false version can live. He looked at me, and I continued. So the question isn't whether you'll start from zero or not. The question is, will you start from zero as yourself, or will you keep starting from zero as someone you're not? Lucas closed his eyes, and new tears rolled down his face. But this time, I felt they were different tears. Not just despair. Maybe understanding, too. Suddenly, without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand. Just a light, comforting touch. But when our fingers met, something in the air shifted. An electric current passed between us, subtle, but undeniable. I should have pulled my hand back. It would have been the right thing to do. But I didn't. And neither did Lucas. Our fingers stayed there, touching lightly, a connection that said more than words ever could. I felt the warmth of his skin, the slight tremor in his fingers, his breath changing its rhythm. And in that simple touch, I realized something I might already have known, but hadn't admitted. It wasn't just empathy I felt for Lucas. There was something more. Something dangerous and real and impossible to ignore. Our eyes met, and in the silence of that room, with our hands still touching, everything became more complicated and more clear at the same time. Raphael, Lucas said. My name had never sounded so intimate coming from anyone. I need to tell you something. My heart sped up. I knew what was coming next, but I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. When I called you here, when I made up that excuse about the computer. He hesitated, looking at our intertwined hands. It wasn't just because I needed technical help. I know, I whispered. I've noticed you for months, Lucas continued, his voice shaking. In the hallway, in the elevator, every time we pass each other, and every time my heart does this strange thing. It races. And I find myself thinking about you afterward, making up reasons in my head to talk to you. He gathered himself before continuing. I called you here because I needed an excuse to be close to you, because I'd figured it out that you were gay. And I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd understand something about me that nobody else could. And because... He hesitated, his fingers tightening around mine. Because when I'm around you, I feel alive in a way I never have with my wife. Not in 3 years of marriage. The air between us was heavy now. Loaded with confession, with possibility, with danger. I knew I should say something responsible. Something about how he needed to sort out his life first. About how we couldn't mix things up. About boundaries and ethics. But the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was, I felt it too. And I'd felt it since the first day Lucas helped me carry boxes into my apartment 8 months ago. Lucas, I began, trying to find the right words. You don't have to decide anything today. About your life, about Carla, about us. You don't need to have all the answers right now. He nodded, but didn't let go of my hand. But you have to be honest with yourself, I continued. And with her. Because the longer you wait, the harder it will get, and the more unfair it will be to everyone involved. I know, he said. I know that. But it's so hard to take the first step. It always is, I said. The first step is always the hardest. But it's also the only one that really matters, because all the other steps only exist after you take the first one. We stayed there, hands clasped, looking at each other. 2 men on the edge of something that could change everything, or ruin everything, or both. And in that moment, I knew it didn't matter what happened next. Our life as cordial, distant neighbors was over. There was no going back. The truth had been spoken, the feelings exposed, and now we'd have to deal with the consequences. But for the first time since Lucas knocked on my door asking for help with the computer, I saw something different on his face. It wasn't just fear. It wasn't just despair. There was a spark of something new there. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, there was a path through this darkness. A path to authenticity. A path to a life that could truly be his. A path that might, at some uncertain future, include the possibility of something between us. But before anything else, he had to be honest. He had to face his truth. He had to have the conversation he'd been avoiding for years. And me? I had to decide if I was willing to wait. If I was willing to risk my heart in such a complicated situation. If I was willing to be part of his journey, knowing there were no guarantees of where it would end. But as I looked at Lucas, stripped bare by vulnerability and trembling courage, and I knew the answer. Some people come into your life and you just know everything changes after this. You can fight it, rationalize it, list all the reasons it shouldn't happen. But somewhere deep, you know it will. And I knew. So I did what felt right. I reached out and took his hand. Lucas looked at our entwined hands. Then he looked at me. And in that look there was so many layers of fear and hope and desire and panic that I had to gather all my strength not to lose myself in those brown eyes. But I also knew I had to be honest. Because he deserved honesty. After everything he had just shared with me, after that raw, desperate act of courage, I couldn't do any less than that. So I spoke softly. I said the truth that had been burning in my chest since the moment he showed up at my door with that ridiculous excuse about his computer. I get you, Lucas, I said. More than you think. He squeezed my hand a little tighter. I also know what it's like to feel this. That attraction you didn't ask for, didn't choose. But that's there anyway. I know what it's like to look at someone and realize you're not who everyone expects you to be. I've been through it. Not in the same way you have. Not with a marriage on the line. But I know what fear feels like. I know what hiding feels like. Lucas made a sound that was almost a laugh, but not quite. When did you stop hiding? I thought for a moment, because it wasn't a simple question. There wasn't a single miraculous turning point. It had been a long, painful process, full of steps forward and back. It wasn't just one moment. It was 1,000 small decisions, each one scary in its own way. The first time I actually said it out loud. The first time I told a friend. The first time I brought someone I cared about to a family gathering. And was it awful? Sometimes. I lost people. Some I thought would always be there. My dad didn't speak to me for 2 years. Even now, our relationship isn't what it used to be. Lucas closed his eyes, but it was also freeing in ways I couldn't even imagine. You don't realize how much energy you spend hiding until you stop doing it. It's like carrying a heavy weight for years, and one day you finally set it down. You don't realize how much energy you were burning just staying upright. "I don't know if I can, Raphael," he whispered. "I don't know if I'm that brave." And here was the most important thing I needed to say. The thing no one had told me when I was where Lucas was now. You don't have to be brave. Not all the time. You just have to be honest. And sometimes honesty is the scariest thing in the world. We were quiet for a long moment, our hands still intertwined. I could hear the faint sound of traffic outside. Someone laughed in an apartment above us. Life went on around us while this small world between the two of us seemed suspended in time. Then Lucas spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "When I asked you to help with the computer, I knew there was nothing wrong with it." "I know. You do?" He looked at me with genuine surprise. "Lucas, you work in corporate finance. You probably fix more technically complicated problems than that every day. But I came anyway because, well, I guess I wanted an excuse." "For what?" "To be near you." Something changed on his face when I said that. The tension he'd been carrying in his shoulders since he walked into my apartment seemed to ease a little. As if, finally, he wasn't alone in this terrible and wonderful thing. But then, reality returned. Because reality always returns. "I need to talk to Carla." "Yes, you need to. I don't know what I'll say. You'll tell the truth, because she deserves that. And so do you." Lucas pulled his hand back, but it wasn't a rejection. It was more like he needed space to process. He ran his hands through his hair, messing up that perfectly neat style that probably took him 10 minutes every morning to achieve. "What if she hates me? What if my family hates me? What if I lose everything?" "You might lose some things. I'm not going to lie about that. Some people won't understand. Some will walk away, and it will hurt in ways you're not prepared for. That's not exactly comforting." "No, but you know what else isn't comforting? Waking up every day of your life beside someone you love, but not in the way they deserve to be loved. Growing old in a life that's not yours. Dying without ever having been truly yourself." He looked at me, and there were tears in his eyes again. "Are you feeling this too? What's between us?" "Yes, I'm feeling it. And what do we do with it?" And here was the hardest moment. Because every fiber of my being wanted to say, "Let's explore this now. Let's see where it goes. Let's allow ourselves to have it." But I knew it wasn't right. Not like this. Not while he was still trapped in a life that wasn't his. "Nothing. For now." He blinked. "Nothing? Lucas, you're married. You're in one of the most confusing and terrifying moments of your life. And yes, there's something here between us. I'm not going to pretend there isn't. But you can't build something new before you honestly end what already exists. That's very mature of you." "It's not maturity, it's self-preservation. Because if we start something now, this way, with you still divided, with you still hiding, it will poison everything that could be. And I don't want that." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying you need to talk to Carla. You need to be honest with her about who you are. And then, after that, after you've done the hard work of being true to yourself, maybe we can see if this thing still exists. What if you meet someone in the meantime? Then I'll meet someone, and you'll know it wasn't meant to be. But I honestly think if this is real, if it's something worth it, it'll be here when you're ready." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. I could see his mind working, processing, trying to find an easier way out that didn't exist. You're right, I hate that, but you're right. I know, and I hate it too. We both laughed, a sad, wet sound that was more a shared acknowledgement of the messy business of being human. Can I call you? After I've talked to her? When everything is, I don't know, less chaotic? You can call me whenever you want, Lucas. I'll be here. Not as pressure, not as an obligation, but as someone who understands, as someone who wants to see you live a life that's truly yours. He got up then, wiping his face with the back of his hand. And for the first time since he came into my apartment that night, he seemed lighter. Still scared, still uncertain, but with something new in his eyes. Something that looked a lot like hope. Thank you, Raphael, for listening, for not judging me, for being honest with me when I wasn't being honest with myself. I stood up too. You've already taken the hardest step. You said it out loud. You admitted it to yourself and to another person. Everything after that is just navigating the path. Just navigating the path. You talk like it's easy. I never said it would be easy. I only said it'd be better than the alternative. We walked to the door. Lucas hesitated for a moment, his hand on the doorknob. I really hope this isn't the last time we talk. It won't be. I promise. He opened the door, but before he left, he turned and hugged me. It was quick, but intense. I could feel his tremble, the uneven breathing, all the emotion he was still processing. When he stepped back, his eyes met mine one last time. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, you need courage, and you've already proven you have that. And then he was gone. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and I stood there in my empty apartment, still feeling the warmth of his hug, the scent of his cologne that had lingered on my coat. I wondered if I'd done the right thing, if I should have offered more, or less, or something different. But deep down, I knew I'd done what needed to be done. Because loving someone, even when that love is only beginning to take shape, means wanting them to be the best version of themselves. Even if that is hard, even if it hurts. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed thinking about Lucas, about what he must be feeling in that moment. If he was able to sleep, if he was looking at Carla and feeling the weight of the conversation he needed to have. I wondered how long it would take. Days? Weeks? Months? I wondered if he would really have the courage to do it, or if fear would win in the end. I had no answers, only hope. On the other side of the wall, Lucas watched the sleepless city. He looked at the wedding photo, then at Raphael's contact on his phone. He didn't call. Knowing he was there was enough. Tomorrow, or later, the conversation would come. The lie now had an expiration date. The sun rose over São Paulo, lighting up our apartments. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, possible. Lucas was ready to start living his own life, but little did we know fate still had one last card to play.